So, humor. Why do we need humor? We're going to actually talk about that video a little bit later. I've got plans for it. Why do we need humor? And I'll give you candy if you can. Yes? I love that comment. Here you go. And it didn't make it to you at all. So the reader can feel like it's a happy story at points. It gives the reader a break. What else? So genuine humor is important. How about you at that table? One more question. One more comment. Perfect. It's in the head. Sorry. Okay. It eases up the tension. In real life, humor does that too, right? Humor doesn't take away conflict. It never does. Oh, I mentioned it last time. I guess if you're about to get pummeled or punched by a bully and you use a funny, humorous quip, they may change their mind about punching you, but it's very, very rare. Most of the time, and I'd say, a good percentage, 90% of the time, humor does not get rid of the conflict. But it gives you a break. It gives you a moment to exhale before you have to hold your breath again because you're involved in a conflict. The other thing that humor does, you guys are in high school or junior high, you guys have hundreds of conversations a day, don't you? You have big conversations, small conversations, significant ones that you've been planning on all day, insignificant ones that you don't even remember, conversations with teachers and other kids. The conversations you remember are when someone does something endearing that you can relate with. Now, if the boy is hot or the girl is hot, yes, you remember that. Well, she talked to me. Okay, he wouldn't say that. Did she talk to me? We don't do that either, I don't think. Do we, guys? I hope not. But if there's funny, that's another way that you can relate and connect with somebody. I've always heard that. Oh, he's the funniest guy I've ever met. Oh, she is so funny. She said something hilarious in class, and you remember. And for a long period of time, when you see that person, you've connected. You remember how funny they were. Same thing applies in writing. Writing humor allows the reader to take a break and exhale, to get a moment to realize it's a happy story. It can be a happy story. It gives a break from the tension, not the conflict. The conflict will still be there. It doesn't go away, but it gives you a break. The second, it forms a connection with the main character or a character in the book. And that is critical. If you want your readers to love your characters, they have to form a bond of some sort with your character. And humor's a great way. So first things first, we're going to determine our level of humor. And I made these things up. I don't know if you know what they're really called, but I broke it up into 3 categories. 1, these are the eye rollers. We'll talk about that. 2 are the AC/DCs. Anybody know who AC/DC is? Yeah? Shoot the Thrill. Oh, that's good stuff. I actually had the song going to play, but didn't make it onto this draft. So, no AC/DC music. I downloaded the song for nothing. So, AC/DCs, and then everything else. And that's a lame category, but that's the only thing I can think of. So, eye rollers, AC/DCs, and everything else. Now, the first thing I want to say, none of these are bad. They are all good. Even though the term eye rollers can kind of make you think, oh, this is a dumb story. They're not bad. They're actually really good. So first things first, we'll talk about eye rollers. These are your Diary of a Wimpy Kids, right? These are your Captain Underpants, Dork Diaries, the Vordak, the Incomprehensible, Diary of a Kid, again, I put it up there. And then, have you read Neil Gaiman's Fortunately in the Milk? Anyone read that? That's fantastic. I classify that as an eye roller. Hash Brown Winters, that's a book I wrote, a series I wrote. There's 4 books in that. I would say that's an eye roller as well. Again, nothing negative about eye rollers. They're a very valuable genre. They have very little seriousness involved, if any. So you're not going to see hardly any seriousness. And in fact, the moments that you will have seriousness in it, something is going to really mess it up to make it unserious again. Okay? Not intended for riveting plot twists. You don't read Diary of a Wimpy Kid and say, I didn't see that coming. Of course, the pictures are on there, so you know it's coming, right? Every character supplies the humor, including, and most especially, the narrator. The narrator is just as much a character as anyone else in your book. And they have to supply the humor. A lot of times we'll write stories or we'll read stories where the narrator just kind of moves you along. They'll just move the pages, tells you what's happening. It's kind of a background voice. Well, in eye rollers specifically, and actually I will say here, if you want to be a good writer, your narrator has to have a voice just as much as your main character. They have to be someone that we can connect with. But in eye rollers, they have to be supplying the humor, the wittiness, the snarkiness, the sassiness, good word there, okay? Often involves potty humor or the use of bodily functions. I did tell you my pee story. I didn't tell you my pee story. I told you my Mountain Dew story that looked like pee. But those are your eye rollers, and kids like that stuff. I like that stuff. My mom to this day, I'm almost 37. She says, "Why do you like farts so much?" I'm like, they're funny. Anyways, we'll move on. I digress. The ability to sketch somewhat discernible pictures is a bonus. If you can do stick figures, great, put them in, because people laugh at that stuff. And it is an art. When you see Diary of a Wimpy Kid, that is art, even though it's all stick figure drawings. It's a good stuff. Okay. Who reads it? Anyone in here read an eye roller lately? Anyone read Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Anyone read Hash Brown Winners? Oh, the one person. There's two. You don't count. Typically, even though we all kind of read them at some point, we've all read a Diary of a Wimpy Kid or something like that. Reluctant middle grade boys and girls, usually between the ages of 8 to 10. These are your kids that I need to be reading. My mom and dad wants me to be reading. And the parents are freaking out because the kids don't have a desire to read, so they throw a Diary of a Wimpy Kid in front of them, and suddenly they're into it. Yes? That's the target. So if you're, an eye roller, this is my category again. I don't think there's a science to what I wrote, but I would say you're getting the, second, third, fourth graders that maybe they're not ready to read yet. They're not ready to pick up a Harry Potter and start going through it. They'll get tired and bored with it because they don't have that attention span. So an eye roller is a good way to get it started. Obviously, the adults or parents of the middle grade boys and girls, authors wanting to write for this group, we want to read these. Librarians and teachers of middle grade students. And then in terms of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, the whole freaking world read that book, right? I think the most recent printing of Diary of a Wimpy Kid was like 7 million copies or something like that. It's crazy. But this is a legitimate category. And it can be very rewarding and very fun to write for this category. I don't think you should be scared of it at all. I'm going to give you a couple of tips for writing this, and then we'll go on to the next category here. Number one, you have to allow yourself absolute freedom. No restraints. The more ridiculous, the better. You find a situation you can put your character in. I don't even care what it is. The last group, they said, put them locked in the bathroom, and there's octopus coming out of the toilet. Yeah, it's weird, but that works in these type of situations. Okay? There's no boundaries. Yes?
Yeah, have you ever read Science Fair?
Science, I heard of it, yeah. Is that kind of like what happened in that?
It is absolutely ridiculously funny.
Yeah.
It is just out of this world nuts.
And we've all seen movies that are eye rollers, but that are still funny. Now, I don't know if this movie's that funny, but Dude, Where's My Car? Pretty stupid. But there's points where you laugh and you enjoy it, I guess. Yeah, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Yeah, lots of movies. Yes? Nacho Libre is one of my all-time favorites. I love Nacho Libre. Lots of potty humor in that one. It gave me no nutrients. Anyways, okay. Second, you ride an eye roller as a practice and a gateway into another genre. And what I mean by that, I'll tell you a story. Now, when I was writing, I first started writing a book intending to be published. And I wrote this book called The Dothian Box. And it was about this kid whose dad dies, and he finds this box in the basement, and he opens it, and he gets sucked into another world, and he ends up being the king, and it's amazing. It was the best book ever written. It was better than Harry Potter. It really wasn't. And actually, now I read it, I can't believe I ever sent it out to anybody. It was embarrassing. But I thought it was this book. It was the book of books that was going to make me millions of dollars. Still waiting for that check. And it's never been published. But while I was submitting that to agents and publishers, getting rejected hundreds of times, I started writing a book called Hash Brown Winners as a gateway, as a release. A book that I could write something and I didn't have to follow the rules of writing. And so many books you have to follow, most rules you have to follow. With Hash Brown I didn't. I could write whatever I wanted. And I created Wiz Peterson, which was the kid that pees his pants all the time, who was me in 3rd grade. I created a kid that was trapped in his locker for 7 years. He was the all-seeing oracle, and people go to him to ask him questions, but he just can't get out of his locker. There's so many things, and I had no boundaries. But that ultimately was the first book that was published. And I was shocked by it because it was never intended to be a book that I would try to sell. But the reason why I think it sold is because, one, I allowed myself absolute freedom. Absolute freedom. I had any boundaries with that. I didn't care. I didn't care how much pee was in that story. I didn't care that the cover was yellow, coincidentally. And I let myself have that freedom, and I think that brought out my best writing. And it's kind of led me on to other things. Let's see, make sure I'm not skipping stuff in my notes. Let's see here. Oh, and then another tip for eye rollers. If you're struggling to create a narrative that's funny and zany, write it in first person to make your narrator your first character, the main character. It's very critical that your main character has a sense of humor or has stupid and funny things happen to them. You know, Greg in Divergent is funny because things happen to him, and it's his reactions and his arrogance and things like that. Okay? All right. I've got a little break video. You want to click that? It's a video. That one. Yeah. This has nothing to do with anything, but it's a break.
Every year, every day, thousands of people fall victim to FWP.
I'm so cold.
Starving. Nobody cares about me. Also known as first world problems.
I'm so cold. Somebody set the AC to 72. I needed it 73.
Starving. How it has leftovers. Nobody cares about me. Nobody commented or liked my status. Hi, I'm Ryan Eager, and for just $5 of attention a day, you could help somebody with FWP.
Everyone keeps putting so much pressure on me. I don't know what I want for my birthday.
I have too much chips for my dip. But if I open any dip, I'll have too much dip for the chips.
Why does Apple keep making new iPhones? Now I have to get another one? They've been through so much struggle. The root's over there. And I'm all the way over here. So much hardship.
My iPhone 5 is too big for my skinny jeans.
So much attention. I poured my cereal without checking to see if it had milk. Okay. So please, show your support and send them this video. And show them how much we care about their FWPs.
I want to make groceries. Now I have to make 2 trips.
All you have to do is call the URL.
That's a real problem.
And we'll send you the FWP helping kit, which includes a bridge, a straw, and a full cup with a cover.
Here's a bridge. Now get over it.
Here's a straw. Now suck it up. Here's a full cup. Now shut the full cup. With your help, focus on the real problems, like starving children or homeless people. Because if you're complaining about something as silly as the iPhone 5, just wait till you see the iPhone 6.
Oh, this is the iPhone 5S. This is the iPhone 6. Alright. That had nothing to do with anything I'm talking about, but I needed a break for a second. Okay, AC/DCs. These are your action comedies, drama comedies, or any other genre comedy. These are where, it seems like your Bad Unicorn. You guys seen Bad Unicorn? I just bought this for my son. It's pretty hilarious. Fablehaven falls in this category. I would say Percy Jackson, Janitors falls in this category. Artemis Fowl, Far World. A lot of the authors that are represented here at Teen Boot Camp. Jinx, I just got done reading that one. Inventor's Secret, Guardians of the Finisher's Fury, Case Files, keep on going. Okay. Basically, it's middle grade fiction. With the exception of a few titles, I would say are classified as an AC/DC. Something where action or comedy shares the spotlight with another genre. Something else. So like in terms of my stories that I've written, it's fantasy elements, there's some action involved, but comedy has a very important element to it. So I wrote a series called The Guardians of the Hidden Scepter. There's a few books in that series. But I wanted it to be funny. I wanted to maintain that integrity, that it has funny humor throughout it. And so I consider it AC/DC. The majority of middle grade teen writers will live in this category. Even teen authors for the most part. Now some teen books are very, very serious. And we'll talk about that falls in the everything else category. So humor shares the spotlight with another genre. Humor enhances the ideas and the story. Not every page needs a zinger, but there needs to be a hearty supply of laughs within. This is where we find the great comedic sidekicks of the world. And then humor is used to keep these stories on the lighter side. Let me give you an example. I wrote a book, and it's actually going to come out next year. And right now it's called The Summoner's Handbook, but it won't be called that. They don't like the title. They don't like my titles. That's okay. I'm not a very good title writer. But I'll give you a little background. So it's kind of like a paranormal middle grade where there's demons and monsters, and they're really, they're like real monsters. They're cyclops, and they're just very grotesque. And there's also this, in the afterlife, there's what's called a guardian angel school. And this kid goes to guardian angel school. He comes back to protect this one kid who has found the book that can open the gateway for all monsters to enter into the world. So there's a lot of humor involved because the guardian angel has no clue what he's doing, accidentally possesses the main character, so that's kind of a problem. The whole story is inside his head. But there's some darkness to it. The monsters, I wanted the monsters to be real and creepy and dark. Well, my editor came right out in a couple scenes. I'll give you an example. One of the main bad guy is a monster named Hunga. He's a cyclops. He runs a demon outpost in the underworld. He has an office where demons will come in and check in and get their assignments, and he gets paid. He's got a little minion demon named Trudy, who's a little dog-eared demon that kind of runs around and does his biddings. Well, one of the things that I had put into in the office are all these different torture devices. And one particularly, it was like the Iron Maiden. If you've ever seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and put them in the Iron Maiden. That's what I wanted in my office. So we had a maiden in the office, and every time someone was going to get tortured, the little Trudy would start going, Maiden, Maiden, Maiden. And I loved it. I loved this part. Well, that didn't fly. It didn't fly because it was too dark. Remember, even though everybody reads this genre, it's intended for 8 to 12-year-olds. And 8 to 12-year-olds, they have concerned parents that they don't want learning too much about torture and giving them ideas maybe for what they can do to their younger brothers or their parents if they're big, I guess. So I had to change it. I had to soften it. And the idea that they came to me at first, I did not like. And my editor said, we like this idea that instead of shouting maiden, they shout old maid. I'm like, what? And maybe torture is playing cards for demons. And I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But this was Random House, so I wasn't going to say anything. And I remember saying, what the heck am I supposed to do? So I kind of went with it. And I created this whole different aspect of demons, how they are tortured by the recreational activities of humans. So sports, arts and crafts, and particularly board games and games torture them. So it opened this whole new world. I have Unga, who actually collects the games because he loves torturing his demons and anyone he can get his hands on. And so they play a game called Bones, which is like Jenga, only it's used with bones, human bones. And there's also Trudy brings Hunga a Monopoly game as a president and just lights his world up. He's so excited. But it worked. But it was a hard thing to do, and it was a different situation that I had to do in order to make that book work. But just as a reminder, I didn't realize that. I thought, I've read Harry Potter, I read Fablehaven. There are some dark situations in those stories. But if the audience if it's intended for 8 to 12-year-olds, sometimes your editor will come back and no, we don't want this dark. We want it lighter. And humor is a way to do that as well. So making that humorous situation where it's board games actually worked. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Who reads this? Everyone. Yeah, middle grade boys and girls, teen readers, YA and adult readers. Everyone reads it. That's me and my wife and a couple friends. You guys didn't like that picture. Everyone reads this genre. They really do. And so I'm going to spend a little time here. So for first things first, tips. Number one, allow your main character to have some humorous attributes. You may want them to be serious, and in fact, we're going to talk about that in a second. It is critical that they are serious for most of the story, but allow them to be witty, snarky, and clumsy. Someone said in the last class, is sarcasm a good thing to have? I love sarcasm for a main character. I love it. Why? Because most of our main characters, and in most of the books that you love to read, the main character is not this super buff, amazing athlete. Everyone loves them. They have everything going right in their world. They're not that person. Typically, they're a person that gets picked on, or they come from a bad situation. They have a lot of things that are sad in their life, and they aren't able to face all their fears by beating the next guy up. They're not going to do that. So they have to have a personality trait which helps them. And snarkiness, wittiness, clumsy is a funny one too. Someone that always knocks things over. I don't know if you ever read the book Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians. Oh, yeah, apparently some of you have. Well, I mean, what's his superhero power? He breaks things, right? He breaks things. And Brandon Sanderson made that into a really funny, cool skill. And there's the other guy that always arrives late. He arrives late to getting shot. You know, it's cool stuff. Anyways, okay. Main character to have some humorous attributes. 2, there needs to be problems. I don't know if that's even good English. There needs to be problems in your story and conflict that happens to your character. Don't automatically make your main character a victim. Give them a sense of humor to handle the situations. If everything just happens and they just take it and they never say anything, they never open their mouth, I think you can do so many things with a sense of humor. Let's see here. And then, I'll tell you, also, I didn't put this on there, try a new angle for your humor. It works with the eye rollers, obviously, you know, octopus in the bathroom or whatever, that works. But try a new angle with your humor. I'll give you another example from what I'm writing right now. I'm working on the sequel, and one of the characters, I love the demons, and I think that's part of the appeal of the story is you see into the world of the demons. You don't just see they're monsters that want to kill you and eat you. You also see, they have personality, that they have recreational things that they do. They're just like us, only they're monsters, right? So one of the demons is Trudy. I told you about him, a little dog-eared demon that's kind of sniveling. Well, he's going through puberty in the second book. So most demons, they go through an adolescent change. They get bigger, stronger, more powerful. It's taking a longer time with Trudy, so his head's just gotten bigger, and his voice keeps cracking whenever he talks. And I think that's a different angle that readers will be able to say, oh, that's funny, because we all gone through puberty, or some of us are going through puberty. Some of us take a long time to get through it. Do we even know what puberty is? It's not that type of presentation. It's not the maturation program right now, just so you know. Thank goodness. I never went through that. Anyways, okay. I didn't. I had to take my kid to that. I don't know what the heck is this. Okay, anyways. All right. So, but Amber is one of my characters in my book. She is not the funniest, and she's my main character, but I wanted her to not just be cardboard and not be someone that no one can relate with. I wanted her to be somebody that people actually root for. And when I first wrote her, she was very like that. She never handled the situation with a witty comeback. She just handled it. And she was always very serious. And she always, and that's boring. I had to give her some personality. Now, I couldn't give her all the personality because I needed her to be serious in certain situations. When the predicament is very dire, there needs to be a level head, and I wanted it to be Amber. But that's where the secondary characters come into play. I strongly recommend, in fact, I think most authors here and most authors you'll meet will recommend that if you're writing a book, and maybe it's a first person, it's a middle grader, it's teen, whatever you're writing, unless you're writing a journal or you're writing a very serious kind of memoir, which you shouldn't be doing right now because you guys are in high school, you should be having fun. But if you're writing a book, you always give your main character a buddy. It is uber critical. Because a buddy does so many things for the story. One, sidekicks allow you to dump a ton of humorous situations into your story while maintaining the integrity of your main character. every time there was something bad happen, and your main character said, I took it like whimsically, didn't care, wasn't worried about it, you would lose respect for your main character. If Harry Potter always just brushed everything off, didn't care about it, if Voldemort came and was doing Avada Kedavra to him and he made a witty comment as the spell was cast into the air, you would lose respect for Harry Potter. But insert Ron Weasley, and suddenly you have someone that can make the funny comments and make the sarcastic remarks and not take everything serious. And not only does it work, but we love those characters. We love them, and it strengthens our main characters. What was that one? Donkey? Oh, Donkey and Shrek. Very good. I love Donkey's one of my all-time favorite animated characters, hands down. I love Donkey. One of the best roles for Eddie Murphy ever. Everything else he does is meh. But that was great. Sidekicks don't have to follow the same rules as your main character. They can be snarky or obnoxious throughout the entire story. Now, granted, there are moments where you might need them to be serious if it's a very big climactic situation. But for the most part, you have free reign to do whatever you want to that character and make them say whatever you think is funny at any point. And your readers will still love that character. And it makes the story stronger because of it. So yeah, Ron was a big one. I love Ron Weasley. I loved him. And that's what made me love Harry Potter even more, because here's this guy that just has the right thing to say at the wrong time. All the time. I don't know what these guys are called, but you remember Fablehaven, the two satires? I forgot the names. But they were really funny, and I thought that's what made those scenes where I think it's Seth, goes into the woods and sees the two Doran or something like that, Newell and Doran, that's what it was. I didn't want to put it on there because I didn't want to insult Brandon Mole by saying the wrong names, but those were great scenes, and it was a great break. You said it earlier, it's a break. You get a relaxation for a moment, and you can say, hey, this is funny, before you're plunged back into the cold water. Yes? What's it called? Invader's Den. I'll have to check that out. I told you about Tremon. He's the sidekick character I put in the Guardian series to add the comedic relief. Because you need to have that. You need to have someone that can break it up. Yes? Say that again. Neo? Leo. From Percy Jackson. I was like, Leo the Thundercat? Because he was very serious. And I thought, okay, yes. If you start thinking about it, you can find every book you read, there is one of these characters in it. There is always one of these characters. Okay. Alright, everything else. Let me see if I have anything else on that real quick. I don't want to skip AC/DC. There's one of my favorite topics to talk about here. Okay, no, I'm good. We're going to move on. We only got a few minutes left, right? How much longer do I have? Is it till 11:50 or? Okay, 11:40, 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes. Alright, everything else. For all the rest of the books, and you might say, you know what, I'm not writing an eye roller, I'm not writing an AC/DC, I'm writing a teen Hunger Games dystopian type of book. And I'm not going to fill it with 50% humor. I'm not. So this is everything else. Humor is used to create interest in a key character, transforming them from cardboard to complex. You think about it, Lord of the Rings, not a humorous book, right? But there are moments in it where you're like, hey, that's a bonus. I did not sign up for humor reading Lord of the Rings, but I got a bonus when there was a drinking game between, I think that's only the movie though, drinking game between, what's his face, Legolas and Gimli. Or when they're in that fighting war trying to see who kills the most people. That still counts as one. And that's funny stuff. But you didn't sign up for that, and you understood that I'm going into this reading a serious fantasy novel that's full of epic battles, but the humor is a bonus. It's embedded, more difficult to find. With these, so there's some divergence. Hunger Games, City of Bones, Twilight, Shakespeare. Where on that? So that's what humor is used for, is to enhance your character. Let's see here. Yeah, any questions about that so far? I don't want to go into too much detail about that because I typically write for the middle grade audience, but humor is one of those important tools that you should always use at some point in every story because it enhances your character. It gives them something that you weren't expecting. Now, how do you write real life situations into humorous ones? Let me give you the background of Fred Wilcoxon. We're going to watch that video again for a treat. But Fred was my best friend in high school. And we were 14 years old at the time. And Fred was about 5'2", 5'3". I think he still is to this day. He never grew any taller. But what Fred had was so much confidence. He thought he was the hottest boy in the school. He thought every girl loved him. He thought he could beat up anyone in the school. He actually got me in so much trouble with bigger guys because he would call them on the phone or get into a standoff and say, Frank's got my back. And I would say, I don't have your back. I got his back. I'll sweep you up when he's done beating you up. And that was Fred. Uber confident. He was so into himself. And so that leading up to that, I'll tell you another story. So he had this girl that he was in love with. Her name is Kristen Nuss. Anyone here last year? Anyone in my class yet last year? Good, so I can tell the story. You haven't heard it. He loved this girl named Kristen. And she could have her pick of any guy. She didn't like Fred. He was too short. He wasn't who she was interested in. So, it didn't stop him. He would always try to find a way to get close to her, put the moves on her. It was very ridiculous at times. But he was very persistent. And he was going to this, it was spring break, and everyone was going to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which is kind of close, about 4 hours away where I grew up in Kentucky. And it's kind of like a park city. There's amusement parks and stuff there. Well, it turns out he was going, and so was Kristen. And he asked her, hey, if I see you there, we should probably hang out. And she agreed. So I remember Fred was just impossible. He was rubbing his hands together. He was so excited. He's got this chance to put the moves on Kristen in a theme park atmosphere. And what's more romantic than that? So he meets Kristen there. And it was amazing that he met her there. And she actually said, yeah, we'll hang out. So they're walking around this theme park. And he had the idea to go to a photo booth thing where they had a little printout photos. So he sits in this picture, and I've seen the picture. I wasn't there, but I've seen it, and it was horrifying. Very, very bad. And the first picture, he thought, all right, this is going to be my chance to put the moves on her. She's going to fall for me now, of all the times. And you see the first picture, and he's standing like this, terrified, scared to death, pale in the face, and she's kind of smiling. The next picture, he's doing the same thing. And the third picture, this is when the move is beginning. He goes to put his arm around her and elbows her right in the lip. So you see her face like this, and in the fourth picture, he's kind of like, no! So there's a little background, so I've seen the pictures. Needless to say, she wanted nothing to do with Fred after he bloodied her lip at the theme park. But that's Fred. I tell you that because, when we click that again, we're going to show you this. Just to give you another taste of my favorite video.
Yeah. Thank you, Johnny. Oh, is that enough for you, Fred?
One last talk for the ladies.
All right.
This one, I'll be coming in from outside, and possibly one hair first.
Let's see this one in action, ladies and gentlemen. He does. Are you okay, Fred? I hope so. All right.
So if you were to write that into a scene, and you said, Fred went for a dunk and he fell on his butt, that wouldn't work. It wouldn't be funny. What makes that scene funny? So it's how high he gets, not very high at all. What do you think? The build-up is critical in humorous situations. You back there. The amount of confidence. Fred's personality coming. You had to know about it. I wouldn't throw this scene at the beginning of the book. I would say, I need my readers to understand who Fred truly is. What he's done before I'm going to show this scene, because then it's more priceless. What do you think? Slow motion does make it funny. I don't know how you write slow motion. There you go. You drag it out with a little dot, dot, dot. What do you think? Yeah. The setup. This one's for the ladies. I dedicate this done to you ladies. I'm gonna fall my butt for you. And if you don't hear it either, you hear it, it's kind of mumbled. He even says, he foreshadows. My feet are kind of wet and I might fall and bust my butt. And then you hear me say, and he does. And that's what makes a great scene. It's very difficult to write action and make it funny. Tripping down the hallway is not very funny. It's funny to see, but not funny to read, right? But everything leading up to that scene and the aftermath of that scene is what makes it a classic moment. And that's what you need to work on. You need to work on the build-up. If you're going to make a very climactic, funny scene in your book, you have to work hard on the build-up because you want it to deliver the punch that you're looking for. In this one, I'll tell you a little bit more about that story. I actually had that video, and I went to school one day with it in high school, and then we had a substitute teacher in my drama class or English class, and I popped it into the video, and everyone watched it. And so he was immortalized as that kid that fell. And then I found the video at my parents' home recently. I was able to digitize it. Now it's all over YouTube. Wow, it's only got a few hits. You guys can like it more if you want to. But now that's just things that you can exaggerate and make that story into your own. So, what questions? I think that's all I have. Let me see. Oh, what makes something funny? Exaggeration, irony, reactions. That's what makes it funny. The actual action itself, by itself, is not. It's everything that leads up as a total package. What questions you guys have about writing humor or writing books in general I can answer for you? Anyone? Yes. I have not read Ranger's Apprentice. So that's a good example. You hear Ranger's Apprentice, I always think of Lord of the Rings. But he was just saying some of the funniest books he's ever read because they put that sarcasm and the comedy in there. Anything else? Yes? That's a very good quote. You have to make it funny, tell a joke, lighten it up. But then, like I said in the beginning, it does not eliminate the conflict. A joke will never do that in most cases, but it will lighten it, yes. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have enough time for this. So how do you get your characters to have that comedic relief? Try something out, and I use this sometimes as a practice run. It may not help yet, but I try to take a personal situation, my embarrassing situation that I've had, and try to write it with 1,000 words or less. And the reason why I do that is that I can write it in 1,000 words or less. I'm only hitting on the key parts that are funny. I have to get rid of all the fluff. And then everyone knows you pattern your character after someone you know. I knew a lot of funny people growing up. And I use a lot of them as models for my characters. Real humor that happens in real life still works in books. If you can write that same snarky, sarcastic comments in your books, it will work as well. But that's a good drill. Take your most embarrassing moment, write it with 1,000 words or less, and see if you've got the funniest points. And then you take out everything else because that's not important for that scene. Anything else? Hey, you guys have been awesome. Thanks for your participation. Hope you learned something about humor. And I will see you later.